Hi, and welcome to Learning and Practice. This session follows the first session, presenting the first method for solving quadratics, the simple method. There are still 3 other methods to cover, and for each method we will be having a presentation session followed by a session where we'll go through some practice questions. Now for this session we'll go through 3 practice questions using different attributes for the simple method. Now in the simple method we saw that the value of a in the general form of the quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c, a equals 1, so give us the format x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now in this first question, a is equal to 1, b is equal to plus 8, and c is equal to minus 20. So we end up with the quadratic x squared plus 8x minus 20 equals 0. We're going to try and factorize in the form x plus or minus a certain number times x plus or minus another number equals 0. Now first we're going to look at the method we used in the previous session, and the first number we look at is c. In our case it's minus 20. I'm going to try and find the factors of minus 20. Now we're going to start with the obvious ones. So in this case the factors of 20 is 1 and 20, so that the product is 20, but we look at the sign in a second stage like we've seen in the previous session. So let's start with the factors of 20. Now the obvious one is 1 and 20, then times 1 by 2 is 2, divide 20 by 2 is 10, and times 2 by 2 is 4, divide 10 by 2 is 5, and that gives us all the factors of 20. Now the factors are obtained, we need to decide on the signs that these factors will take. Now in order to achieve that, we look at b, which is the factor of x. Now here it's plus 8, so we're looking for 2 numbers that add up to give 8 or plus 8, positive. So if the sum is positive, that means the larger factor for each pair must be positive. So for example, if we look at the pair 1 and 20, the sum is positive, so 20 has to be positive for that sum to be, no matter what the sign of 1 is. So in our case, if the sum is positive, the bigger numbers are positive. So for all the pairs of factors, all the bigger numbers are positive, plus 20, plus 10, and plus 5. Now we have plus times minus is minus, so the other factors, the smaller factors, are negative. So we can see that the product for each of them is minus 20. Of course the sum is going to be different, so we need to find which 2 factors will give us a sum of plus 8. In other words, we're looking for the matching factors. In this case, minus 2 and 10. So 10 plus minus 2 is plus 8, and 10 times minus 2 is minus 20. And we found our 2 matching factors, which we can now use to complete the factorization and start solving our quadratic. So we're going to have x minus 2 times x plus 10 equals 0. And like we've seen in last lesson, if 2 factors multiply to give 0, one of the factors must be 0. So in our case here, we could have either x minus 2 equals 0, the first factor equals 0, which we're going to solve, simple linear equation. To get rid of it, do the opposite. So we're going to do plus 2 on each side to keep the balance, which gives us the first root, or the first solution, x equals plus 2. X equals positive 2. So therefore, x equals 2 is our first root. Now the second possibility is to have the second factor equals to 0. So in this case, x plus 10 must be 0 for the product to be equal to 0. Again, it's a simple linear equation. X plus 10 equals 0. To get rid of it, we do the opposite. So we're going to do the opposite of plus 10. It's minus 10 on both sides. So that minus 10 on both sides. So we can get rid of the minus 10 and we keep the balance. And the second root, or the second solution, is therefore x equals minus 10. And we solved our quadratic. X squared plus 8x minus 20 equals 0. Now in the second example, we're going to look at a quadratic where b and c have different signs, because we need to prove here that the algorithm works no matter what the signs of b and c are. So we have our two solutions here. Let's see now a second example where b, instead of being positive, plus 8, now b is negative, minus 2. C was negative. We're going to keep it negative in this example as well. We're going to minus 24. So the product of two numbers is minus 24. And the sum of those two numbers must be minus 2. So we're going to look for those two numbers. We're going to follow our algorithm. And first, of course, we're going to look at the product, which is 24. So we are trying to find two numbers that would multiply to give 24. So let's identify the factors of 24 first. So the simplest one, always 1 and 24 times by 2, divide by 2 gives me 2 and 12. And then 1 times 3 is 3, 24 divided by 3 is 8. 2 times 2 is 4, 12 divided by 2 is 6, and we found all the factors of 24, all the possible factors of 24. But now we need to decide for the signs. Now for that, we need to look at the sum, which is given by the factor of x. Now look here, the sum of the two numbers is negative. That means the larger number has to be negative for the sum of the two factors to be negative. So minus 24 is negative, so is minus 12, minus 8 is minus 6. Minus times minus is plus, so the other factors must be positive. So you can see in this case the sum of the factors is always negative, and the product is always minus 24. But which two factors will give us a sum of minus 2? That's what we are looking for in order to factorize. In other words, we try to identify the matching factors. In our case is minus 6 and plus 4. Minus 6 plus 4 is minus 2, and minus 6 times plus 4 is minus 24. So we found our two factors, the matching factors. We're going to use them to factorize, which gives us x plus 4 times x minus 6 equals 0. The factorization is complete. Now we can start solving. Two factors multiplied together give 0. One of them must be 0. So you can have either the first factor, x plus 4 equals 0. We're going to solve it. Minus 4 on both sides to keep the balance, and therefore the first root, or the first solution, is x equals minus 4. Now that's the first solution. Now the second factor could be 0 as well. So we're going to have x minus 6 can also be equal to 0, so that the product is 0. And therefore, by doing plus 6 on both sides to keep the balance, we're going to have x equals 6, which is our second root, or second solution. Now I'm going to look at the third example, where we're going to change again the signs of b and c. So notice in this case b is minus 2, c is minus 24. Now in our next example, we can see that b is still negative, but c is positive. So b is minus 6, and the product c is plus 8. So we're looking for two numbers that would multiply to give plus 8 and add together to give minus 6. Now first, in our approach, following the algorithm we developed in the previous session, and we've seen in the previous two examples, we look at the factors of 8. So 1 and 8, the obvious one, times by 2 divided by 2, 2 and 4, and these are the factors of 8. Now we need to decide for the signs, and yes, we need to look at the factor of x, which is the sum of the two numbers. Now this time the sum is negative. That means the larger factor must be negative for the sum to be negative. So in our case, we're going to have 8 and 4 are negative, and minus times a plus is minus. So the second factor is also negative. So both factors will multiply to give plus 8, because minus times minus is plus. But we need to see which two factors add up to give minus 6. And those are going to be our matching factors we're going to use to factorize this quadratic and solve it. So minus 4 and minus 2, because the sum is minus 6 and the product is plus 8. And these are our matching factors. And we're going to use them to factorize our quadratic. So we have two factors that multiply to give 0. and we have our two matching factors, -2 and -4. So one of the factors must be 0. So the first possibility here is to have that first factor, x minus 2, equal to 0. So you're going to have either x minus 2 equals 0, solving a simple linear equation, plus 2 on both sides. Get rid of it, we do the opposite, and to keep the balance, we do it on both sides, so we end up with the first roots, x equals +2. Now, the second possibility is to have the second factor equals to 0. So in our case, x minus 4 equals to 0, plus 4 on both sides, and we end up with the second roots, x equals +4. So here we looked at 3 practice questions to practice the simple method. The first method out of the 4 we're going to be introducing this series of lessons about solving quadratics. Our next lesson we introduce the second method, the AC method, and we're going to look after that for another session with some practice questions. Well, thank you and see you next lesson.